Picture a morning in early spring. The air still has a cold edge to it. Your coffee is going cold on the porch rail, and you walk out to the bed where your tomatoes grew last year, and you push a spade into it, and it doesn't sink. It thuds. You turn one shovelful over, and it comes up as a single hard block. Gray at the broken edge. No worms, no smell, just quiet. And here's the part that stings. You fed that bed. You bought the bag. You followed the directions printed right there on the back of it, and it still came up looking like that. I've stood over that same shovel more times than I care to admit. And here's what took me years to understand. When soil goes flat like that, more fertilizer is usually the wrong answer. Fertilizer feeds the plant. It doesn't feed the ground. And a plant sitting in dead ground is a guest at an empty table, no matter how much you hand it. Today, I want to show you two old tricks that cost almost nothing. The first one rebuilds the home your soil lost. The second one keeps the food coming, week after week, without you lifting a finger. But I have to warn you about something in that first trick. There's one step where a perfectly innocent-looking bag from your garage can quietly ruin the whole thing. I'll show you exactly what to look for. Let's start. The first trick is a mix. 3 ingredients, and every one is probably within 30 feet of you right now. Start with eggshells. Rinse them under the tap when you crack them, and set them on a plate on the windowsill until they crackle. Then, here's where most folks stop short. Don't just crush them. Grind them fine. Like flour. A blender works. So does a paper bag and a rolling pin, if you'd rather not run a machine. Because here's the honest truth. That calcium is a savings account, not cash in your pocket. A coarse piece of shell can sit in your soil for years and still look like a piece of shell. Ground fine, it releases slowly, season after season, and becomes a quiet mineral reserve down there. And let me save you a heartbreak. If your tomatoes get that black, leathery patch on the bottom, blossom end rot, most gardeners reach for calcium. I did. I buried shells under every plant one June and got the same rot in August. Extension researchers at Minnesota and Mississippi State have both looked at this. Most garden soil already has plenty of calcium. The problem isn't the supply, it's the delivery. Calcium rides up into the fruit with water, so when the soil swings from bone dry to soaked and back, the plant can't carry it where it's needed. The real fix is free. Water steadily. Put mulch down. So we add eggshells for the long game, not as a rescue. Now the second ingredient, and here I need you to listen closely. Charcoal. Charcoal is remarkable stuff in soil. Look at the broken face of a piece sometime. It's full of little chambers, thousands of them. That structure holds moisture, holds nutrients where roots can reach them, and gives soil life a place to shelter. But here comes the bag I warned you about. Most of us hear charcoal and picture the sack in the garage next to the grill. Please don't. Those pressed briquettes are manufactured fuel. They can carry binders, coal dust, borax, sometimes petroleum products. The Royal Horticultural Society warns against them, and horticulturist Robert Westerfield says they carry binders you don't want near vegetables. Anything labeled instant light has been soaked in lighter fluid. That belongs on the grill, not in the ground your food grows in. Here's my rule. If the bag says briquette, it stays with the grill. What you want is plain hardwood lump charcoal, the kind that still looks like pieces of wood, or real biochar. Crush it with a hammer or a brick. Dampen it first, though. Charcoal dust gets everywhere, and you don't want to breathe it. Now, here's the part almost nobody tells you, and I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. You've got your crushed charcoal in a bucket. Looks powerful. Looks like it ought to do something. It won't. Not yet. Fresh charcoal is an empty hotel. Beautiful rooms, thousands of them, every one of them vacant. No food in the kitchen, nobody living there. And an empty hotel doesn't sit politely and wait. All those chambers start pulling in whatever's nearby. Moisture, nitrogen, the very nutrients your plants were counting on. So a gardener spreads raw charcoal in spring, and by July his plants look paler than before, and he can't work out why. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. You charge it first. Put the crushed charcoal in a bucket, add 2 good handfuls of finished compost or well-rotted manure, and cover it with water. Set it in the shade with a loose lid and stir it when you walk past. 1 to 2 weeks. What happens in there is that compost and water move into all those empty rooms. Nutrients settle in, life moves in. That dead black chunk becomes a fully booked hotel before it ever touches your garden. And here's what I find lovely. The old-timers who dumped charcoal straight in with the manure and mixed it all together were doing this right without ever calling it anything. Researchers at Cornell found the same in the field. Charcoal alone does very little, but charcoal together with compost changes what happens in the ground. The old hands got there first. They just didn't have a word for it. Which brings us to the third ingredient, the food. Well-rotted manure, or good finished compost if manure is hard to come by. It has to be genuinely broken down. Dark, crumbly, smelling like a forest floor. Fresh manure is too hot. It scorches tender roots and can carry organisms you don't want near a salad. If you do use raw or aged manure on a vegetable bed, the guidance from the USDA and from extension offices like Maine and Penn State is to work it in well ahead of harvest. 120 days for anything that touches the soil, 90 for the rest. And one more thing, because it can save your season. Be careful with manure from an unknown source. Some hay carries herbicides that survive the animal and the compost pile, and they'll twist and stunt your tomatoes months later. Here's free insurance. 3 bean seeds in a cup of plain soil. 3 more in a cup mixed half and half with your new manure. 3 weeks on the windowsill. If the manure cup comes up cupped and curled while the plain one looks fine, a handful of beans just saved your whole garden. Now put it together. Your charged charcoal goes into a bucket, wet and dripping, that's fine. Your eggshell powder. Then 2 or 3 times as much rotted manure or compost. Mix until it's all one color. Don't measure. I never have. If it looks dark and damp and holds together when you squeeze it, you've got it. To use it, open a shallow trench alongside your plants, 4 to 6 inches out from the stem so you're not cutting roots. 2 or 3 inches deep. Lay the mix in and draw the soil back over it. And if kneeling is hard on you, and I know for many of us it is, you don't have to dig at all. Scratch the mix into the top inch with a long-handled cultivator, standing up, and pull mulch over it. It's slower, but it works. Then water, properly. Soaked, not sprinkled. Because water is the switch. Everything you just buried is dry ingredients until moisture arrives. Water carries the compost life down into the charcoal and wakes organisms that have been waiting in that soil all along. And now you can see why these 3 belong together. The manure is the meal. The charcoal is the house and the pantry, holding it all so the first heavy rain can't wash your work away. The eggshells are the slow reserve for the seasons ahead, and the water opens the door. That isn't 3 folk remedies in a bucket. It's a home, a meal, and a savings account. Now, before the second trick, one short story. There are patches of ground along the Amazon River that are deep black and remarkably fertile, in a region where soil is supposed to be poor and worn out. They're called terra preta, dark earth. A Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek wrote the first serious study of them in 1966, and that soil isn't natural. It was made by people 2,000 years ago and more. Out of charcoal from their cooking fires and scraps from their kitchens, a handful at a time, generation after generation. They had ashes and peelings and patience, and those plots are still growing food today. Long before anyone could buy fertility in a plastic bag, people were building it. This isn't a new idea, it's a very old one. So the first trick feeds the soil. The second turns the soil itself into the thing that does the feeding. And you can build it this weekend with a shovel and whatever came out of your kitchen this week. Start by picking your spot. Sun matters most. 6 hours of direct light for most vegetables, so watch where the morning shade lifts. Clear the weeds and stones, then loosen the top few inches, just enough to break the crust. Now build the bed up. No lumber, no frame, not a dollar spent. Pull soil in from the paths on either side until the bed sits 3 or 4 inches higher than the ground around it. That little lift gives roots air and gives water somewhere to go. Then shape a low ridge down each long side. A small wall of soil, 2 or 3 inches high. Old technique and clever. When you water, or when rain comes, Those ridges hold it over the bed instead of letting it run off down the path, taking your good soil with it. In a hot, dry summer, that detail is worth more than anything you can buy. But one adjustment: if you garden on heavy clay, or somewhere it rains hard for days, don't seal that basin. Leave one end of the ridge open so the excess can walk away. What holds water beautifully in Texas can drown roots in a wet Ohio spring. Read your own ground. Now the heart of it. Down the center of that bed, open a trench and go deeper than feels necessary, 12 inches or so. Into that trench go your kitchen scraps: vegetable peels, fruit cores, coffee grounds and the filter, tea leaves, wilted greens from the crisper drawer, spent plants and fallen leaves, shredded if you can. No meat, no dairy, no oily leftovers. Those don't break down cleanly, and they'll bring visitors you don't want. Chop what you can, it goes faster, but don't make a chore of it. Fill the bottom 4 to 6 inches of the trench, no more. Then cover it, and this is the step people rush. You want at least 8 inches of soil back over that material. The extension folks in Nebraska put it plainly: bury it properly and there's no odor, no flies, and nothing for a raccoon to find. Mound it a little high, because it will settle as the material below disappears. Then a thin layer of compost across the whole surface, a soft bed for seeds, and water it all in. Now let me tell you what you've actually just done, because it doesn't feel like much standing there with a bucket of potato peelings. You haven't buried garbage, you've started a slow fire. A cold one. Down under that bed, in the dark, worms are already moving toward it. Fungal threads are reaching into it. Bacteria are taking it apart. And for the next several weeks, and then months, that buried strip releases food and moisture and carbon upward, into the root zone, on its own schedule. You built a fertilizer factory under your garden and it runs on peelings. Nobody has to turn it. Nobody has to haul it. There's no pile in the corner of the yard to feel guilty about. And every week when you empty the bowl from under the sink, you're refueling it. One caution on planting, because this is where good intentions go sideways. Don't sow seeds directly on top of fresh scraps that haven't started breaking down. That material is actively decomposing. It pulls nitrogen while it works, it gives off heat, and the ground above it sinks. So you have two easy choices. Give it 4 to 6 weeks before you plant over it, which is why fall is such a fine time to build these beds. Or plant now, but plant to the sides of the trench rather than on it. Your roots will find their way over, they always do. And keep the bed damp, not soaked, damp like a wrung-out cloth. Now put the two tricks side by side and you'll see why I never do one without the other. The first builds the house: shelter, storage, a stocked pantry, minerals in the bank. The second keeps the kitchen open, a steady supply coming in from your own counter, week after week, so the residents never have to leave. A house with no food empties out. Food with no house washes away in the first hard rain. Together they stop being tricks and start being a living system. That's the difference between feeding a plant and rebuilding the ground it stands in. One lasts a season, the other keeps giving long after you've stopped thinking about it. Now, I won't promise you a transformation in a week. Anyone who says soil comes back to life in a few days is selling you something. Moisture and food do wake up biology that's already down there, and that part happens fairly quickly. But resilient soil is a process, not a miracle. So here's what to watch for. First, the feel. Pick up a handful in a month or two, and it should crumble instead of clumping. That's structure returning. Then the surface. That hard crust after rain starts to soften. Water soaks in instead of running off, and the bed stays damp longer between waterings. Then my favorite. Turn a shovelful and count what moves. Worms, beetles, the small unglamorous crowd. When they show up, they've told you the food is real. Look for the buried material disappearing, until by next season, you'd never know it was there. Look for the color darkening, shade by shade. And when you pull a plant in fall, look at the roots, thick, branching, spread wide instead of balled up. That's the whole report card, and none of it needs a test kit. Skirty, I want to leave you with my grandmother. She kept an enamel bucket under her sink. Peelings, coffee, eggshells, the ends of things. Every evening she carried it out to the garden, and I thought it was just a chore she'd never gotten around to quitting. It took me most of my life to understand she wasn't throwing anything away. She was putting it back. Most of us were taught to ask the wrong question. We stand in the garden aisle and ask, "What can I buy to feed this plant?" The better question is this: what can I give back to this soil so it can start taking care of the plants for me? The eggshells on the windowsill, the charcoal from a wood fire, the peelings in the bowl, the manure a neighbor with horses is glad to be rid of. None of it is waste. It's the circle, waiting for you to close it. Your soil isn't dead, my friends. It's hungry, and you already own everything it's asking for. So now I'd love to hear from you. Did your mother or your grandfather have a soil trick? Something they did every year that you never questioned as a child, and now you'd give anything to ask them about? Coffee grounds, ashes from the stove, a bucket under the sink, fish scraps under the tomatoes. Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you garden and what your ground is like. Because someone reading is fighting the same clay you are, these things get lost when nobody writes them down. So let's write them down here. Take care of your soil, and it will spend the rest of its life taking care of you. I'll see you in the garden.